We all get lost in the details, looking for the perfect way to climb the ranked ladder. And to be honest, lately I've been struggling to get out of Emerald. It was never really difficult for me in the past to do this, and that kind of bothered me a bit. So because mechanically, I'm playing a lot better than I used to, and I started asking myself what was actually going on and what was the problem. So I cut out all the generic, climbing advice that all of us kind of look through sometimes, and because a lot of it does help early on, but once you actually climb, you kind of realize that everybody understands the same concepts. The difference though isn't knowledge at this point, it's the execution inside your own games, which made me go back. Not like recently, it made me go back to when I had hit my peak. And I didn't just try to see whether I could copy what I was doing, I just wanted to see what I stopped doing in the process. And it kind of hit hard because subconsciously I stopped playing the game and I started playing for the moment. I was taking riskier engages because I did feel really confident. And when my team fell behind, I would kind of, like panic. I would force fights, I'd force objectives, even when the percentage of success was a lot lower than a different kind of decision that I could have made. I would ignore the better play, and I'd be 3 kills ahead in lane, for example, and still end up behind because instead of pressing my lead or like um, I'd force I'd force roams to help teammates basically, and while I'm gone, and while you'd realize this a lot if you're a mid laner, top laner, maybe you'd realize that your laner would get free XP, free tempo, and free control, which is a lot worse than being 3 kills ahead. Like you prefer to be ahead tempo wise than to be ahead kill wise and behind in XP, if you get what I mean. And here's the scary part. I'm making a lot less mistakes than I used to make, but the ones that I'm making now are a lot more impactful on the game than the ones I would make then. So I'd make a lot of small mistakes then, but now I'm making a lot less, but they're bigger mistakes. And in a high elo, you know how many times you'll just like look at the you'll just look at the replay. Maybe sometimes you make a very deciding play and it goes south, and you realize that I was fed, and I think I just screwed up the entire game because that was the one decision that everybody followed you on, or maybe that was one decision that you shouldn't have made because you were starting to try to end the game quicker because you were worried about late game or whatever. And in higher elo, that's all it takes. It's not about that one bad game that you have. It's about the same decisions that we repeat over a dozen games, which are slowly killing the win rate that you have. So, like for example, I'll be honest. When I hit diamond, I got really comfortable. Okay, like I was soaring through diamond. I'm like, okay, well, I think I figured out the game, and not I got comfortable to a point where it wasn't obvious, but it was just enough to lose sharpness. And I realized that that comfort is something that is not really good when you're trying to play competitive games like this. And I know that everyone's had that moment. Oh, if I didn't make that one play, we would have won. Or like just the thing is, you don't take it emotionally, because I've been taking it a little bit emotionally lately, and I've been watching more and more of my games, and I realize that it's just information. You like if you rewatch a lot of your games, you'll find the decisions that actually changed the outcomes of the game. Your team may have made the worst decisions, but guess what? Like you're supposedly better than that. So if you do have carry potential, just know that your mistakes will outweigh the rest of the team's mistakes. And this is one thing that I want to point out as well, don't try to carry the bad decisions only on you. Like, watch the games that went perfectly as well, and see what made you win. You get what I mean? Like, see the how your choices, how your decisions made everything just make the game win. Like, whether your team was doing great or not, you still had more space and room to make decisions. And even in those good games, though, I'm gonna be honest, there's mistakes that you could have not made. So just, look for the good decision, look for the bad decision, and try to use it as information for future games. Um, Also, one thing to keep in mind is that League is pretty difficult because it isn't scripted. You're not like fighting a boss with set mechanics. You're just reacting to constant changing of information. And one of the things that clicked with me was this. There was this video that I watched by a small YouTuber like myself named Kyle. Um, it was really, really, really good advice because it kind of helped click with everything. And so thank you for that to him if he sees this. Rebuilding fundamentals was never about mechanics, just so you know. It was about rebuilding how you think as a player, or how I think as a player, basically. And that's what the essence of fundamentals are. And besides that, like, I'm starting to realize that, in a lot of games where I'm not like 18-3, or like in some games that I'm like 1-0-1 and I've got 200 CS, jungle, basically. I noticed that I win a lot more because I'm focused on the objectives. I don't give tempo to the enemy laner. And that really, really, really helps. Like, there's always a time and a place where you're gonna fight. Okay, you don't have to force it. Sometimes, I don't know if you've noticed, but maybe skirmishes happen. Maybe you're at mid lane with as a jungler, and you see that bot is about to fight with like a zillion ult up or whatever, and you try to run there, and it turns out great. That was a good decision because you know that the ult from Zillion is gonna give them some extra time to stay in the fight, and that the enemies are gonna be too focused on Zillion to notice you coming to the lane. So that may give you a good. It's just an example, but there's a lot of things that you'll notice in the game that you're like, okay, this is 100% the right play. I know I'm far, but I'm gonna go for it anyway, and it turns out great. Yeah. So one of the things is that you don't really need to force stuff. The more you force stuff, the more it may turn into a bad play. Like, it's a lot better to just go for the 100%, or maybe 90% versus the 70 or 80% plays. And I think that's the difference between high elo, like a lot higher elo. Like, I've I kind of witnessed it when I was playing in high diamond, that these things were, it was a lot, the game was so much better, so much it was a lot easier because not many people were forcing the fights, to be honest. It was just like, you're just farming, you're doing your shit, and then you realize, oh, everybody's just like trying to set up the vision, trying to set up for Drake. So it happens naturally. You know what you do, you're trying to defend the Drake, trying to maybe steal it, or it's a lot of things. Anyway, thank you so much. And do stick around because I'd like to let you know that I'm going to be streaming at some point in the future. I'm just a little under the weather, so it's been taking me a while. And I have to be honest, talking to myself is something that I have to get used to with this camera thing because it's a little, what should I say? It's a little weird, so I have to get used to it. But other than that, I'd like to cover some of the league changes that are coming in 2026 together, and I want to see what you want to say. So I'm gonna do that on live stream, and do tune in for the next vids, guys. Thank you for the support so far.